So what I'm going to do in this video is replace the clutch in this B2150 Kubota Tractor, and it's pretty much the same procedure on any of the other brand tractors out there. You have to separate the tractor into two pieces, and all you do is put a floor jack under each half and they roll apart. It's not real hard to do that, and the customer says that it's hard to put it in gear and it makes a noise, so most likely the clutch pilot bearing's bad. So the first things that I'm going to take off are the floorboards, the positive battery cable. This is the fuel line. It needs to be disconnected. There's some wires here. And on this side, there's a bunch of hoses that have to be disconnected. They're hydraulic hoses, and the floorboard needs to come out. This bracket under the dash needs to come out. And underneath these bars, this bracket's going to come out, and then the bolts come out in the back on both sides. What I think I'll do is I got this harness you can wear the GoPro, and then I can film all this while I'm doing it. And I think that's how I'm going to do this. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove this floorboard. And there's just a couple of bolts down here. Yeah, once I get this apart, the parts will have to be ordered, so it won't be put back together right away. And I'm also going to take this bracket off. Yeah, so next I need to disconnect the fuel line and all these cables here. One of them's the battery cable. And the fuel hose goes right up here. Next, all these wires got to be disconnected. And that connects to these two lights, gas gauge sending unit, and there's some ground wires over here is where it actually goes to. Yeah, I think I might just take the battery out here. Yeah, it's been many years since I've worked on one of these. Yeah, and all these wires unplugged, so you don't want to cut anything. And it looks like there's 4 more bolts to get this bracket off that are on the inside in here. And here's a wire that's burned up. Yeah, on this side there's a lot of stuff in the way to get. Yeah, and the reason you have to take all this stuff off is these bolts have to come out all the way around. That's how you get to the clutch. And I still got to take the floorboard off on this side, and all these hoses got to be disconnected, I think. There might be enough room to where I don't have to do that. Yeah, and there was a couple bolts on the side, and I took the hood off. There's just some pins that come out. Now you can see this broken wire here. I can fix that easy. But if you take the steering wheel off, this piece will just pick up. You can put it out of the way. This whole section here. And to get the steering wheel off, all I did was pulled up on it, and I hit it with one of these plastic hammers, the center shaft, and it came off. Yeah, it took several hits, but it didn't damage it then. Yeah, so then the steering box has to come off because you got to get back in here. So the batteries went dead on the camera. So off camera, I removed the steering box and the hood and this piece, and I just pushed it out of the way. So what has to happen next is these hydraulic lines need to be disconnected. And these orange brackets down here need to be undone. And the front drive shaft has to be taken apart. And then I take these bolts out here, and then the whole thing will separate into two pieces. You put two jacks under it. So right now I'm unbolting these orange brackets. And on the front drive shaft, there's this rubber boot up near the front, and you undo that. It looks like it's just on a spline shaft, so I think that'll just pull apart. Yeah, so it looks like all I have left to do is unhook these hoses here. And then I can start taking the bolts out, and I got to put floor jacks under it, and it should just roll right apart. And I'm marking all these lines so I know how they hook back up, so I can go do this much faster to put it back together. Yeah, so I got all the hydraulic lines off. There's two that go to the hydraulic pump. There's a fuel line that has to be disconnected. That line that I disconnected on the tank previously, I think that was the return line. Then you got one line up on here on this control valve that's got to come off. So there's quite a few hoses that got to be disconnected. So I'm ready to unbolt this thing now. I got jacks under it. And I'll start the camera again after I get the bolts out. There's no point on filming me taking these bolts out around the bell housing here. And it is coming apart. Yeah, this tractor's so small I don't have any way of sticking the jacks under here right to where it'll roll easier. Yeah, I got it all apart. And I just hooked a come along onto the bucket and it rolled forward easy. But you also have to take this gearbox off. So right now, all I'm doing is cleaning all this stuff up. And I left it sitting outside and it got rained on and it was kind of rusted. So I just went over this with this angle Milwaukee die grinder with these Scotch-Brite pads. And I'm going to do the same thing on the pressure plate. But before you take the pressure plate apart, you want to mark it. And I took a center punch and I marked it in 3 places here. Because all this stuff is balanced and you want to put it back together the same way it came apart. Yeah, and this disc with the bigger inside diameter goes in the center of this pressure plate. That's the one that drives the PTO. And you can just eyeball it to get it in the center here. Because I don't have a clutch aligning tool for this. And the one with the smaller inside diameter goes against the flywheel, and it goes this way. So next we have to replace the throwout bearing and the clutch pilot bearing, and this was hard to get this apart. You have to take the cotter key out of here, and I had to spray WD-40 on here, then the shaft comes out. And to get the throwout bearing out of there, the spring is attached to the top side. You can't hardly see that. You turn it and it disconnects it, and then you can turn it to where this is straight down and take this bolt out, and then the whole thing comes out here. Then we got to take this bearing out. There's a snap ring, and then press the new bearing on here, and I'll clean all this rust up, and it'll go back together easy next time. Actually, this throwout bearing went on here very easy. You don't even have to press that on. It came up by hand, and I cleaned this all up. And we'll put a little bit of grease on this so it slides easy when I put it back together. And that spring will have to come back off before it slides in there. And so now I'm going to put the pilot bearing in here. Yeah, I got the throwout bearing back in here. I didn't film it because you wouldn't have been able to see anything anyways. And you got to have that bolt hole facing down, and then you put the spring on it and turn it 180 degrees. And then you have to feel around up in there until the spring actually hooks onto this piece of metal. And then you slide the clutch shaft through there and the clutch fork. Yeah, I don't know how well it's going to show up. But when you have a thin bushing in a blind hole like that, the easiest way to get that out is just to screw a tap into it that's the right size. Then screw a bolt in there, and then you can pull on the bolt. Yeah, and here's something I made a long time ago with vice grips and a slide hammer. They do make a thing that screws in here, but it's not in a straight line, so it's better to weld the vice grips to it like that. Let's see if this will take us out. And this bolt's a little bit big here. And I need to move the rest of it back for it. Yeah, that pulled it right out of there. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, so I got the bushing in there. It went in there pretty easy. So now you want to put a little bit of grease in here. If I can get it in there, right? Yeah, then next we're ready to put the flywheel on here. Yeah, so now I'm ready to put the pressure plate on here. And I'm going to stick it on here loose without the clutch disc. And then we'll stick the disc in here. Now, before I can tighten that down, I have to get the disc in the center. Yeah, I just took this back off. I almost forgot to put that seal in here. And the seal just goes right in where the clutch pilot bearing goes. Yeah, so I got the clutch back on there, and I just looked in the center hole and I moved the disc around until it looks like it's lined up where it's centered in there. I could make a clutch aligning tool in the lathe, but I don't feel like going through all that. And it should go together no problem now. So now I'm ready to put this back together. Yeah, and there's a gasket that goes around the bell house, and you want to make sure you put that on first. And all that does is help to keep dirt out of here. Yeah, I got it bolted back together halfway now. It was hard to do by myself. With two people, this would be easy to do. Yeah, I think tomorrow I'll finish this. Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is tighten up all the bell housing bolts. And I'm going to do that off camera. There's just no point on doing that on filming this. There's also a bracket that goes right here. And there's some bolts that go back on this orange bracket way in the back. And on the front drive shaft, there's a piece of pipe that goes around it with a rubber boot on it. I need to tighten the hose clamps up on that. Yeah, I'm also replacing the fuel filter and the air filter because it doesn't look like the customer's done much to this tractor. I think the only thing he's ever done is change the oil. Yeah, looking inside the fuel filter cover here, it's just full of dirt. Yeah, I just put the steering box back on and hooked all the lines up. I also got to weld this bracket. It's broken here right by the clutch brake pedals. Yeah, I got all this together loose. There's quite a few pieces that go in this part around the steering column. Another thing you want to do is pull these screens out in front of the radiator and clean them. And look at the radiator, it's got a bunch of dirt stuck to it. Yeah, because the air won't blow through there good like that. Yeah, when you have these tractors, you got to do maintenance to it. This guy doesn't look like he's done anything to this. Yeah, so I got quite a bit back together. What needs to happen next is the clutch needs to be adjusted. What you want is about 1 inch of free play. And as you can see, this has got probably 3 or 4 inches. And all you're going to do is take this nut off, loosen this nut up here, take the cotter key out, and make this rod shorter. Yeah, even the seat bracket is broken. The problem I'm having is this tank is plugged up. No, with the fuel line off, diesel's just dripping out of there. If I blow down it real hard, I can get air to go through it, but nothing hardly comes out. Yeah, I think that tank's all, it looks like it's all rusted on the inside. Yeah, the fuel tank wasn't what was plugged up. It was in the actual line. I blew down this end of the line and something shot out over here. So now I'll put it back together and I'll fix that seat bracket that's broken. Yeah, I just welded the seat bracket back together. The easiest way to get the seat back on is to take these pins out and bolt the bracket on there first and just put the pins back through. Yeah, so it's just about done except that one gearbox I got to put back on, which is over here. I don't have the gasket for it yet. I might just make a gasket so I don't have to wait. Yeah, and I just took and made a gasket for this gearbox so I can finish this. Yeah, it took almost 5 gallons of hydraulic fluid. Yeah, so what I'm going to do to it now is grease all the grease fittings, and then I'm going to clean this up good. Yeah, I got it all finished now.